Welcome back to the Voice of Disruption. I'm Ken Rutkowski, bringing you disruptors in the world. And the guy that's sitting next to me right now is somebody who has disrupted my life and is disrupting, I would say, probably one industry that certainly needs to be constantly disrupted is Mr. Scott Painter. Good to see you, Scott.
Good to see you.
So Scott Painter, when I do a Wikipedia search on you, it's kind of like an IMDb. You got all these things that you've done. It seems like you just can't stop. You're always moving forward.
Well, I feel like I'm on a bit of a crusade. You know, I think that great companies, great entrepreneurs solve real problems, and I haven't finished solving the problem of buying and owning a car.
It sounds like a simple thing, buying and selling a car, but it's not. It's legacy, piled up on top of a lot of legacy.
Well, I think fundamentally we all know that the process of buying a car is broken, but so is the whole experience of owning a car. The average automobile costs about a third of somebody's net worth around the planet. There's 1.4 billion cars on planet Earth. These are non-autonomous, non-electric cars. Those cars get sold on a regular basis and incur about $4 trillion worth of consumer debt every year. Wow. So the auto industry has been pushing all of the risk off to consumers, where you go out, you borrow a big chunk of money to buy an immediately depreciating asset, which is quite possibly the stupidest financial decision you can individually make. And so really, I think that having been on the front line of trying to make the experience of buying a car better and seeing how technology has really transformed that experience, I do feel like I'm on a bit of a crusade. I really do love building great companies. I do like solving big problems. I think this particular one is one of the bigger problems, but I do think that there is a solution out there. And it really starts with figuring out how to leverage technology and then underwrite the transaction.
Let's be fair. Let's make sure people realize that. You're a veteran to this. I mean, you, Cars Direct, TrueCar, you started those companies.
Yep.
You just didn't start it, you ran them. People don't realize you have great starters and you have great people that run businesses, and generally it's rare where they're the same individual. Yeah. And under your new company, Fair.com, you start and you're running. Yep. And you're running fast. Right?
We are. So we've been at it for a couple of years. So I retired from TrueCar at the end of 2015. We started this right away with a partnership between a gentleman by the name of George Bauer and myself. George is quite literally the senior most living human in terms of auto finance and leasing. He was the CEO of Mercedes Credit Corporation. He brought vehicle leasing to the market nearly 30 years ago. He then became the founding CEO of BMW Financial Services, grew that to $130 billion in assets in over 75 countries around the world, retired, was a member of the board of directors at Mercedes. When Mercedes bought Freightliner, he became the CFO of Freightliner, brought truck leasing, amazing partner, did the same thing for Tesla.
So what were the other companies doing that you're going to do better?
Well, I think that everybody in the auto industry right now is trying to figure out how to react to autonomous technology, ride sharing. And the really big point is that the business model of manufacturing and retailing a car is really hard to compete against a recurring revenue model where you've got customers that are paying for ride sharing on a regular basis. And so the real sort of leap that has to occur at the manufacturing level is they have to get out of the business of just trying to make and then sell cars. They're not going to make a better car. The solution has been for the last 100 years, well, let's go back to the drawing board and make a better product. Really, the problem, though, is the modern consumer has said, I'm not going to go into a car dealership anymore. I just don't like the confrontation. I don't like the whole process, and so I don't want to do it. So the real sort of question is, how can the car companies reset that relationship with their consumer?
And so you still have to maintain the car companies themselves because they have to make the car.
Yeah.
But are you saying the dealer is what's old and needs to go away, or are they still necessary?
I think it's not the dealer. It's the structure of the relationship between the customer and the car itself. It's how you get the car. It's how you pay for the car. It's really about this confrontation that's built into a distributor, a dealer, who has to sell a wholesale product that they get at a retail price. And so you've got this imperfect match because you've got a build-to-inventory system as opposed to build-to-order like Tesla has. So you've got this a very, very high probability of a confrontation. That's a high-friction moment, and that's just what modern consumers don't want anymore.
And that is because there's too much inventory sitting on one side. They have to liquidate it as much as they can, and that's difficult, right?
It is, and that's where you get salesmen from, right? Mm-hmm. Salesmen are selling an imperfect match between inventory and what consumer demand is.
So how do you fix it?
Well, you fix it with technology. You fix it by rewriting the actual transaction. So what we've done, the big idea at Fair, is we're not lending people money anymore. this idea that you're going to go borrow this big chunk of money comes with consumer risk on top of the fact that you're buying a depreciating asset, because not everybody has good credit and some people are a bigger risk than others. And so you've got a whole layer of lending that, when you think about globally, $4 trillion of lending that's going out the door, that's coming from banks that are giving it to local credit unions, local banks, and smaller, sort of folks that then get that money out to the consumer, but there's a ton of risk in that. Whereas today, we now actually have total radical clarity around what a car is worth. The wholesale and the retail market is so transparent. The data has so standardized that we can now apples to apples compare all the transactions that are coming across the auction and across at retail. So we can see to the dollar what a car is actually worth.
But there still has to be some type of monetary exchange for the car. If you're saying you're not in that business, is there a third party that you partnered with?
No, so think of it this way. We basically said, rather than you going to the bank and getting a loan for a car, we go to the bank and get a loan for everybody. And the big idea is that we're not lending you money. We're actually entering into a contract on your phone, simultaneously buying the car and giving you access to the car that you want. And you get all the benefits of ownership. You get the optionality, the security, the status that comes with saying that's my car, and you get to put it in your driveway, but you're on a month-to-month agreement. You don't have any commitment. You don't have any equity in the car. You're paying for it on a per-use basis, but we bundle the car with a warranty, standard maintenance, roadside assistance. So everything you would get with a new car, you're now getting with a pre-owned vehicle.
It's incredible.
It's a big idea. And
how's it going?
If we're right, nobody's going to borrow money to get access to a car.
Of course not. It's an
Why go out?
amazing idea.
Yeah.
Where are you at with this?
So we've been at it for 2 years. We went into a soft launch here in Los Angeles last August. We've got 550 local customers here in LA. But as we launched the business, we also then were able to acquire the Uber Exchange leasing portfolio. So we were able to actually go out and help Uber provide this kind of flexibility to their drivers. And so we're also now the Uber exclusive partner in the US for any vehicle over 30 days. So if an Uber driver goes to the app and says, I want to drive, but I don't have a car, that's when they're introduced to Fair.
That's incredible. West Point grad, right?
No, West Point dropout.
Dropout.
Yeah.
Dropout.
Much before it was cool.
Yeah, now it's cool to be a dropout, right?
West Point and then DeKalb Berkeley, dropped out of both.
Because?
I was busy, and I wanted to get on with it, and I started my first company when I was a student at Cal.
Earlier, I asked Pablos if college is necessary. Is it important in today's world?
It's interesting. I think that we've got so much access to information today that you can decide if you want to be the world's leading expert on a thing. The best way to actually get educated is to try to build a business around it. Right. Because when you go out and you pitch investors and you tell your story, your knowledge gets tested. And if you don't have the full 360 knowledge of a thing, you go out and learn it so that you can then, in getting investor dollars is an independent vote that you are on the right path. And
confidence in you, actually. Not just the business, but in you.
Sure, but your ability to articulate the problem and the solution. And so I think entrepreneurs are actually sort of the modern college students, because they're learning at such an aggressive pace and they're pulling the string. They're curious and they want to learn. That's what if you could really wave a magic wand and say, how are people going to get the most out of college? You're going to be completely engaged as a student and want to learn badly everything about a thing. Entrepreneurs deeply, deeply want to learn. They are leaning all the way in. That's the best student.
I remember a talk that you gave, and it may have been, maybe 10 years ago. And you actually initially tried to talk people out of being an entrepreneur because how hard it is and how it's going to affect your life.
Well, no, that's actually what I was trying to identify is what is really required to be an entrepreneur. And it was so cool in 1999 to try and be an entrepreneur. People were not even going into banking or consulting or any of the traditional things you do when you graduate from school, because they were so eager to be an entrepreneur that they were actually muddying up what it meant to be an entrepreneur. They weren't really real entrepreneurs. To be an entrepreneur, it really starts with a certain disposition, a certain personality, a certain amount of fatal optimism. If you don't have that, the idea of saying you're an entrepreneur because it's cool is going to just waste a lot of people's money. It's going to end in a lot of disappointment for you, and you're going to have a pretty miserable time. If you're not predisposed to be a genuine entrepreneur, you're going to have a really, really awful experience.
We all have had rocky roads in our past, all of us. What gives you that bright star in front of you to make you go through all of that?
I fundamentally believe that this problem of buying and owning a car,
because you're passionate about this.
Yeah,
this is your thing.
Yeah, for sure, and I'm that guy now for sure. I've had almost 24 companies in this particular space, raised almost $3 billion in venture capital and private equity to do this. For Fair, we've raised, for this business alone, about $1 billion of debt and equity to be able to grow the business. Because when you decide you want a car on Fair, we buy that car. We're doing it digitally, and then we're simultaneously entering into a contract with you on your phone. So everything happens for you with your finger on your phone. You don't have to negotiate with a dealer. There's no friction. There's no back and forth. There's no offline paperwork to sign. The most important thing that the dealer does is sync your phone to the Bluetooth in the car.
You are so on talking point. I love it, okay? And I appreciate it because this is your new baby.
Yeah.
You're a super dad in my mind, okay? You got incredible kids. I want to go back to this thing about college.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's important to me.
Sure.
Because I'm in this dilemma right now, and I'm trying to figure if I was a teenager and I would actually listen to my parents and friends.
Yeah.
What advice would I give me at that age? What are you giving your kids?
So I've got a 15-year-old son. I've got 4 kids in all, and I'm really sort of concerned about the fact that some of my kids should go to school. Some of my kids I don't think should. And it really is down to personality. And they're going to sort of evolve and continue to determine who is in which camp. But for example, my 15-and-a-half-year-old, he's into sports. He's definitely going to go to school because there's a social dimension into it, and it's going to build up his character, and he's going to learn how to be competitive, and he's going to be part of a sports team, and that's who he wants to be. I've got another kid who is going to love going to school somewhere cold on the East Coast. He's just that kid. He wants to
That's the social scene again, right?
It is, and he wants to be part of that community. I've got a daughter who should never go to school. She is so eager to live and to learn. She's going to want to do everything on her own. She's not going to have enough patience to get into school. And it's not just because she's like, hyper or has ADD. She actually is just too fast. Her brain is working too fast. She doesn't need the social dimension of what school offers her.
I think you've answered it the right way. It's actually up to the individual.
For sure.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
not just one answer for everybody, right? And now moving forward, exciting, fair.com is where people find out more, right?
It's actually an app. The whole
just
thing.
an app.
It's an app. Just go to Fair, and you can download or at the App Store, and we have iOS and Android now.
And is this going to be a global thing?
It will be, yeah. So buying and owning a car is a global phenomenon. I mean, it happens everywhere, and it's a very mature business. Most people do not pay cash for their car. The average vehicle costs about half of what you make in terms of gross income in a year, and about a third of the average person's net worth. Auto finance and leasing is a really important concept.
Absolutely.
It's a big business.
So are you looking at where the larger automobile markets are, or where there's more mobile phone penetration in the world for your next markets?
It's both.
It's
both. This is all unlocked based on technology and mobile adoption rates. So you've got to actually have mobile adoption, but it turns out that those two things happen to correlate at a very high percentage of the time.
They do.
Now with our Uber partnership, we're also looking at markets where ride sharing has become a very dominant part of the market.
Okay, again, you got to get the app. Go to your Android or your iOS device.
Totally new way to get a car.
Get Fair. It's not just in Los Angeles, or is it going to be?
Right now it's statewide in the state of California, but
but
by the end of this year, we'll be nationwide.
Scott Painter, appreciate you hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's it. That's what you got. When we look at a hacker's mindset, entrepreneurial mindset, you learn the idea is this. Just don't take the status quo and find a way to make things better. Ken Rutkowski, thanks a lot for hanging out with us. You've been part of the voice of disruption.